Is right here. All of your problems. Yes, I'm aware. Today is January 14th, 2024. This is the first recording for the podcast Empowered Perspectives. My name is Tion Terrell, founder and president of the We Must Love Us Foundation. And I have with me three men who have taken exceptional interest in my goals for the We Must Love Us Foundation and the Bold Movement. And one of them here actually was one of the hecklers in the video that was recorded of me holding the sign to call attention to the fact that, black people have to be afraid in their own environments after surviving the struggle to have civil rights and equality from, racists, and now they have to be afraid in their own communities, and that's pretty pathetic. Today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the table and have the other men introduce themselves, and then we're going to come out with our topic for the day. So I'm going to start in front of me. Introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Nathan Gossage, and here to learn.
All right.
Tyler Byrne. Fred Knapp.
Okay. I want to point out in particular, when it comes to Tyler, he might be the most formally educated person in the room. That's why I want him here. He's a professor and a philosopher by nature. We've had a lot of conversations. He's given me a lot of guidance, and that's why I asked him to be here. So, our subject for today
Lay it on, Steve.
Okay, this is a website called Reason.com. The heading reads "The Volok Conspiracy." And there's an article here on crime. Do black and white people routinely commit crimes at similar rates? If we focus on violent crime, is black on black crime a myth? Is an article by a criminal law professor Thursday in Columbus Dispatch included this assertion. The reality is that black on black crime is a myth, and that black and white people routinely commit crimes at similar rates, but black people are overwhelmingly targeted for arrest. Yet, I think this is not the reality, at least as to violent crimes of the sort that are usually labeled black on black. When committed by black criminals against black victims, blacks and whites do seem to commit drug possession and drug distribution crimes at relatively similar rates. But in this post, I focus on violent crimes as best as we can tell. Blacks appear to commit violent crimes at a substantially higher rate per capita than do whites. There seems to be little aggregate disparity between the rate at which blacks commit violent crimes, especially when one focuses on crimes where the victims say they reported the crimes to the police, and the rate at which blacks are arrested for crimes, and the black on black crime rate is especially high. Of course, it is always hard to measure what the actual crime rate is for any group, whether for the purposes of claiming that the rates are similar or that they are different. Still, the most reliable data, to my knowledge, is generally the National Crime Victimization Survey and the U.S. Justice Department Bureau of Justice Statistics reports that are based on that survey. Indeed, the link in the quoted sentence from the article goes to a source that relies on such data. All right, I'm going to stop with the article right there.
Okay.
As many of you know, well, as you all know in this room, and some of the audience will know, that the goal of the WMLU is to uplift black culture so that we can basically teach the youth that there are more opportunities out there for them than to follow the media's prescription for black culture, which is, you know, join gangs and be criminals and sell drugs and degrade women and throw money away in strip clubs and buy clothes that you can't afford and basically commit social and financial suicide because you can't maintain this false reality and be a part of mainstream society, which is where success is generated by achieving education, establishing income, saving money, investing in oneself, in one's future, and building a future for yourself, which is, in essence, the American dream that a lot of black people have never even been taught to think about. So I think I'm gonna start with Tyler, since he's the one that actually pointed out these statistics to me.
Sure. So I think the most striking thing here is the disparity between nonviolent crimes in which blacks and whites typically tend to commit at a similar basis, but then you move into violent crimes or murders, and as you go up in the severity of the crime or in the violence of the crime, you start to see the trends increase as far as the disparity between whites and blacks. So it's important to determine what you mean by white and black. So black in the statistical surveys that the FBI puts out means non-Hispanic. Okay, so blacks in those area are 12.5% of the U.S. population at the time that data was put out. And non-Hispanic whites were 60.4% of the population included in that. So it appears from that data that black per capita violent crimes for the country as a whole are 2.8 times the rate of any other race, while the white per capita violent crime rate is 0.9 times the rate for the country as a whole. So if you take that and you divide it into the population, what you see is that it appears that the arrest rates for violent crime are roughly the same. They're comparable to the rates of the offending person based off of their race. The disparity is even more striking when you get into things like murder and non-negligent manslaughter, which essentially is intentional manslaughter. In order to find those crimes, you kind of have to go to the FBI Bureau of Statistics. And while many homicides are unsolved, the aggregate statistics show that black on black violent crime isn't a myth that it's made out to be. Blacks and whites generally commit violent crimes at substantially disparate rates, especially for homicides and very violent crimes. And as best as you can tell based off of the data, the disparity in arrest rates for violent crimes is close to the disparity of the arrest rate that are committed for crimes for that all the rest of it committed from. So a lot of it comes down to reporting data being available, what crimes are actually reported to the police. But all the statistical data in summary shows that blacks can commit a disparate amount of violent crimes when you specifically focus on those areas. And then if you focus on nonviolent crimes, it kind of washes out. It actually does go back down. So that leads to the question next in the discussion of why is that? Why do blacks commit more violent crimes or murders, especially against other blacks?
Well, I'm going to be the first to tackle that question, primarily for the same reasons that I've taken on the responsibility of trying to create a movement to change black culture in the first place. I have had success in mainstream America in professional environments. I've also achieved success as a drug dealer. And I've been to prison twice. So I've spent a lot of time analyzing the behaviors and attitudes of the people who commit these crimes. What I've come to understand is that there is a cultural belief that permeates the low-income black community that
And
We
it is-
should be thugs. We should be gangbangers. We should be drug dealers. It's okay to be criminals. It's okay to be hypersexual. It's okay to degrade women and not respect women. And being that this is a cultural belief that is ingrained in most of these people before they even decide before they're even capable of intellectually discerning what they would like to believe,
so awareness.
it gets fed to them
There's not enough awareness.
through the media.
Yeah, right. There's not enough awareness at a certain age. You already hinted on that, or hit on that, and I totally agree. I think it's not enough awareness. Not talking like the DARE program, but there's not enough awareness in the household, if you will,
Yeah.
for these young children, male, female, no matter. I mean, you know,
Yeah,
we could look at statistics all day long, but there's a core value that we're losing, and one could say it's rearing the children. It's because I think the awareness that we are being fed through the media is so trumped up on political correctness that it can ingrain, like you said, it can ingrain them to accept that, and not for a parent to not improvise, but to improve in their child the critical thinking. Now, I'm not CRT, I'm not critical race, I'm not going political, I'm just saying critical thinking, period. Like, son or honey, daughter, like when you don't have a calculator, or when you don't have this, how are you going to solve the problem? That kind of critical thinking.
Yeah.
Are you going to do what the media tells you to do, or are you going to, you know where I'm going with that?
Well, yeah.
I guess that's kind of, I'm a little too vague on that. I'm sorry.
Well, I reached a conclusion when I was drawing up the business plans and all of this stuff that, black people have systematically been deprived of the opportunity to evolve with the rest of society.
And I was going to say it's cyclical too. It's cyclical.
Cyclical.
It's systematic and cyclical. Yeah, it is very much cyclical and connected to the economy in such a manner. If you're going to look at it from an anthropological standpoint of statistics only.
Yeah.
Did you know, for instance, there was more gun deaths during the whole COVID mandate lockdown than there was in any record year before the 70s or something, where it reached all. Yes, sir. Yeah,
Well,
not putting ethnic background to it, but just gun deaths in general. And guess what? 53% out of those gun deaths in 2020 and 2021 were murder-suicide, gun-suicide death. We have I fail to say the word, mental something going on that needs to be...
Mental health crisis?
Mental health. I'm not going to go on to say psychomental or pseudoscience or something like that. I'm going to go on to say that, look, I'm just going to, layman's terms, we have mental crisis. Not only do we have, and I'm not one of those people that say, we got to end gun control, we got to end gun violence, because it's not the gun.
It's
the person behind it. It's the person behind it, the person using it, so on and so forth. 43% was murder gun deaths. 53% was gun suicide related deaths. And that number has dropped, I'm not going to say exponentially, but it has dropped somewhat since 2020 and 2021. But the above average, that the cap we use right now is related to 1974, I think, where it was up some kind of astronomical percentile. Now, back to what I was trying to say with the economy thing. Does that ring a bell? How was our economy in 2021 and 2021? It was on the outs, man. It's ridiculous. I mean, we're trying to gain. The federal government has tried to, all but, as Tyler would agree, try to soft land a recession. But we're still solvent in the economy. But in 2020, 2021, you couldn't do anything but work at home.
Yeah.
I mean, so you have an economy, so for somebody that can't leave the house and he's tight on money, like you mentioned that you in your far past has had success as a drug dealer. The drug dealer's product, it can't be moved as much. I mean, it turns down to. I'm guessing here at this point. I don't know, but like when there's too much, seems like to me when the economy's bad, there's too much free time, and too much free time on somebody's idle hands can promote a lot of negative statistics, whether they be drugs, murders, I don't know, theft, crime. You know what I mean? And statistically speaking,
You guys hear me?
74 wasn't that a?
You guys,
That was under the what administration? That was probably another bad turnout of economy. I mean, they're just using that as a cap. 74
Well,
deaths from guns were high, all-time high in the
So you
70s.
talk about cultural disparities. So every culture has its own issues. If you look at the statistics on suicide, which is 53% of the death statistics, okay,
Right,
what's
yeah,
the
yeah.
highest ethnic group that commits suicide? Native Americans. Overwhelmingly, Native Americans.
There we go.
Okay?
There we go. Yeah.
And that is a cultural problem.
And they get reparations from our government.
There's a lot of stuff there's a lot of hospitals in Alaska, for example, that are government funded, different things.
Well, what
but,
about the reservations, though? That's another
but
reason
it's,
why not.
but
That's
it's an
the
overly represented culture in the suicide aspect. If you go down, what's the number 2 group?
But they
Most
get
number of
money.
suicides by their population.
But due to
white
the,
people.
But due to
White people are the second highest per capita to commit suicide because of the pressures on them in today's culture. Okay, there's a statistic that goes out that says the only group of people that are allowed to have a racial bias against them in today's society is white people. And it has led to an increase in suicide. They're now the number 2. It used to be overwhelming. There was nowhere close. It was Native Americans. And whites are rapidly catching up on
I
that.
take your statistics
And
on
then
that.
you go
Wherever you
to
research
the-
that, it's
yeah.
good as gold. I'm trying to elaborate on as to the why. And that's I wasn't trying to cut you off. I'm sorry, brother. But no. I mean, the Native American reservations, from what I have heard, I haven't read or seen firsthand experience, but a lot of the crime or the deaths due to they're living off the government from those reparations from the genocide back in the 1800s, whatever the case was, whatever the era was. And I just think the answer is not extra socialism, because that's socialism bordering on communism, where you're going to give them a fish for a day, and they're going to keep on learning how to be dependent on you, rather than teaching them how to fish themselves so they can feed themselves for a lifetime. You know what I mean? That's not the answer, is my opinion, to fighting statistics. Is more government help, reparations, or whatever. I think that almost handicaps the spirit of wanting to get up and become something, to build something.
Well, now you're hitting on actually what the core of what the BOLD movement is about, because I really want Black America to understand that the conditions, well, actually, I want all of America to understand, because the real problem here is the conditions that poor Black communities dwell in have been inherited from generation to generation, back to when the slaves were freed in the Jim Crow era.
Right.
And this is what a lot of people aren't aware of. We aren't that far away. I'm only 47. My great grandmother sharecropped on the land where her mother was a slave.
Yep.
So how much could she teach my grandfather about
Right.
succeeding in American mainstream society with its economics and social rules that we've never been exposed to? She could not. So my grandfather couldn't teach my mother's generation.
Well, and even if they could, look how much change in whatever, industrial, the way of commerce, of doing business, all that underwent dramatic change after the end of the abolition of slavery.
Yeah.
So there's only so much that your great-great-grandmother would have been able to teach your great-great-grandson on how to be successful.
Yeah. So
Because the way of doing business and everything, and the subculture and all that stuff, it changed rapidly in the end of the 19th century.
And also, the access to education was not prevalent back then.
No, not prevalent
There was
at all.
no library.
That
in
took
every
100
corner
years
or-
later. That took
Right.
100 years
It
later
took
for a lot of
100 years.
activists
Right.
to get the government to allow integration of the schools.
yeah, schools weren't desegregated until what?
1960s. Let's just say 1960s.
Yeah,
whatever.
in the
It's 100
1960s.
years after.
So that's only 60 years ago. So
Yeah.
how can a people
Yeah,
who
yeah.
have been psychologically,
Yeah.
economically, and socially oppressed up until the 60s, arguably, then that's only 60 years ago. So you're dealing with the child who's 20 now, or actually, that's actually my generation. My mother was a child watching the civil rights movement on television. And then she had me at 17. So there wasn't really much she could teach me to prepare for mainstream society.
Well, I tell you what. The question at hand was, let's not lose focus of the question, and that's great input, boss. How do you break traditions?
Well,
If this is a tradition that's not very far back, how do you break traditions?
well, this is my plan is this. The WMLU wants to create 3 types of programs. The first one, and you can see this on the website, it's laid out very easy, very plain to comprehend if you're reading it. The first program is we want to create schools in low-income communities that not only prepare children for academic success, but teach them social skills and give them moral guidance. And their mothers will be required to attend 3 days a week to also receive some of this social skills and moral training so that she can better acclimate into mainstream society and change her life around. Because if you try to fix the child and then send them back into an environment that's still debilitating right after school, you haven't accomplished anything.
How do you break an age-old tradition, a ingrained conception of this is the way it is, so this must be the way that I must be in my environment kind of thing? How
Yeah.
do you break that mold? You start a new tradition.
Yeah.
Like you just said, if you were able to empower the next generation with a trade, or I don't care what it is, empower them with something that makes them break from the everyday mold into wanting out there to build something.
The name of our second program actually has the word empower in it. I call it TIME. Tutor, inspire, mentor, empower. And what we would like to do is pay college students to come into high schools after school to do tutoring sessions for the at-risk youth in those schools.
I like it.
I believe that once we create this program, its success or inadequacies will be measurable within months when the next report cards come out.
Probably.
So we'll be able to adjust the program to meet the needs of, the students that we're working with rather effectively, because results will be almost immediate. Also in that program, that's just the tutoring part. The inspiring part is we will expose these children to Black professionals who will come into the schools and do career seminars to teach them about professional careers that Black people have achieved and are successful in. And when the children decide after seeing some of these seminars what careers they would like to pursue, then we set them up with after school jobs working with Black professionals who can mentor them. And the reason why this is important to me is because I want to give these Black children who've never been exposed to Black professionals who can succeed in mainstream society. It will allow them to raise their expectations for themselves.
And
Because typically in low income communities, when you talk to the children, most of their aspirations will be to become an athlete, become an entertainer,
yeah.
or become products of environment and join the local gang and end up dead or in prison before age 20.
Yeah, because there is a statistic, I'm sure somewhere, that they were given that chance, they were given that exposure, and then out of that percentile, half actually went down a good road and the other half didn't because it was easier to go down the other road.
Yeah,
But
well,
no, you're talking like where that's not even apparent anywhere. They've never had any contact from
they don't.
a college student.
Candace Owens asked the questions one time during a YouTube show.
I like Candace.
She said, I've endured, I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember
No, go
exactly,
ahead.
but she said, I come from a poor background.
Yeah.
I've endured racial discrimination. I've even been the victim of hate crimes. So who better represent the problems and the needs of the Black community than me? And my honest answer was me. Because I've lived in the projects. I've sold drugs in the projects. I've been shot. I've been involved in all the violence that goes along with drug dealing. I've been to prison twice. And not only have I had these experiences, I am blessed to have the intellect to be able to communicate these experiences in a ways that other people with backgrounds like mine cannot. So I believe I can make America understand what needs to be done to start solving these problems, which brings me to the third program we want to create, which is long-term rehabilitation for single mothers who are addicted to drugs. We want to get them into the program and bring their children with them.
Yeah.
The first, 30 days of the detox and the intense therapy, there will be limited access to the children's in the evenings after these classes and programs. Once they finish the intense therapy, we want to put them in an independent living situation, an apartment of their own on our campus. The children will have access to public school or daycare, at the facility. The women will receive formal training in trades. It could be culinary arts, it could be cosmetology, it could be nail tech, it could be barbering, and these programs that we use, we will kind of make the facility almost self-sufficient in the way that a prison would be, except we're financing ourselves. Because these women that finish culinary arts or, baking or whatever they take up, we could have a commercial, restaurant that's actually raising money to support this program off of these skills. They will be employed, and they start careers there, and, they can move up or whatever. And the same thing with the barbershop, a nail place, all of those things, greenhouse, because we could teach horticulture at the facility and, sell the plants. So we can make this program self-sufficient, but that's going to take a little time. It's going to take a lot of research.
But there's nothing wrong with that, and I'll tell you why. Because that's pragmatic thinking. There's nothing wrong with being a pragmatist. Tyler would agree that we could ask him, are there still for certain students Pell Grants, certain programs that they can get into that help with student housing? I'm sure he would agree there are somewhere like that in the U.S.
Well,
And not to go super political, but sometimes the answer is not to build a new monster like the wall in the southern border, which, I don't have a problem with the wall, but, what's wrong with enforcing the traditional programs we have in place for so many decades? Well, there's nothing wrong with going back to the way we've been counteracting to help out less fortunate students. We just don't hear enough of it anymore. Well, and it's become laxed.
The thing that makes the WMLU different from other nonprofits that I've had the opportunity to learn about is that I make it very clear, and one of the main messages that I want America to understand is that your tax dollars get embezzled through the criminal justice system. It takes money to supply the police force.
Yeah.
It takes money to build prisons. Yeah. It takes money to supply prisons.
Yeah.
The people who actually make these laws and say we're going to be tougher on crime and give out larger sentences are the very people who invest in these companies.
Yeah.
So they're basically embezzling tax dollars. What the WMLU is trying to do is secure those tax dollars before these criminals go out and commit crimes and have to be prosecuted and sent to prison and put on parole and waste all our tax dollars. We can take those same tax dollars, because you get to write them off when you donate to a 501c3 the same way. You don't have to give them to Uncle Sam at the end of the year because you already used it. Right. And we can use that money to actually change the aspects of culture that indoctrinate these children to believe that they're supposed to be thugs and criminals and gangbangers and drug dealers and so on and so forth. We can fix this problem, but the powers that be that get the opportunity to talk to the masses through the media are convincing Americans that we need to be tougher on crime. We need to lock more people up, when it's obvious that this is not working. It has never worked.
They're not going to get it done,
and it's not going to work. So I'm just like, if we turn would-be thugs, drug dealers, and criminals into productive tax-paying adults, we get would-be welfare-dependent Section 8 living mothers
Yeah.
to become contributing members to society and rate and nurturers of healthy, contributing children, then all the money that's getting spent on a criminal justice system can save Social Security and Medicare.
Right.
And
Well,
it wouldn't take
this is-
very long to do.
Well, this is kind of offbeat, but yeah, the big conundrum is to figure out the way to appropriate funding. I'm not going to argue with there. That'd be hard to do, but this is off beating the path a little bit. But if we were to have funding, I almost see this as a visionary or a vision. I'm not a visionary, but the We Must Love Us, WMLU.
We Must Love Us.
We Must Love, yeah. Camp, like a summer camp, where that's something starting small, like the drop of a rock in a pond. If you had enough funding from certain 501(c)s or whatever they're willing to put towards that, you have a certain constituency that you have come to meet that would be happy to grant their spare time to show kids extracurricular, whether it be how to it could be something as simple as how to save money to whatever they want to learn. I mean, if they want to learn auto mechanics, there you go. I'd be more than happy to bring silk screening.
Well, aren't you a realtor?
I could talk about that too.
One of the things that interests me about
But that's what I envision.
the financial
as a summer camp.
the financial situation of Black America is there are enough wealthy African Americans to invest in fixing our community ourselves.
Yeah.
I don't even understand the cries for what's the word? I use it all the time. The affirmative action,
Oh.
right?
Yeah.
Well, if the Black millionaires and billionaires in this country came together and start investing in the businesses that control this country,
Oh yeah. Where's the philanthropy?
insurance,
Yeah. Right.
agriculture, real estate, and banking. That basically controls all the money in this country. So if we came together and invested in these businesses, of course, people going to need clothes and food and so on and so forth. So if we built our own businesses near these low-income communities where our people could work, we wouldn't need affirmative action. If we built our own educational institutions and gave out scholarships to who we wanted to, we wouldn't need affirmative action. And the money's there to do it. But for some reason, when we have a lot of times, and I understand it, I can't blame any particular individual or any group of individuals in the entertainment or, the athletes, because I understand that they were never educated to think this way. And then when they come into these contracts and these monies, they get provided with lawyers and accountants to tell them what to do because they would be ignorant with what to do with all this money without these people. But I want to create.
And what are the majority of those accountants?
White?
Non-black.
Non-black.
Pick
yeah.
any other race you want.
Yeah, they're non-black.
Okay, there's a lot of Asians in the financial industry, for example, non-black.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the people want to talk about appropriating funds for this to fix that or whatever, but the problem is you're not solving the root issue. You're not solving the problem that's in the community. Okay, as of last year, there was 2 or 3 well-known investing in the black community ETFs that would do just that. They would, if you invested in these ETFs, they were socially responsible. You would be investing in black businesses. Out of the 3 that were listed, 2 of them have already been delisted because of not enough interest.
Right.
Okay? It is historically shown in any data you can look at that black people don't want to invest in their own community, especially wealthy black people. We say, well, why? You see a lot of them talk a big game, but when it comes down to it, the real reason is, and it's not a popular opinion, I know, but it's a crabs in the barrel mentality, right? If you were in that environment your whole life and you're a rich, successful black person and you have spent your life building this successful brand, you're a sports athlete, you spent your life honing yourself to be the best at what you can do, and you make all this money, but what happened along the way when you were growing up? Oh, you'll never get out of the hood. You'll never make it out of here. You'll never do this. You'll never succeed. And who are they being ridiculed by? other black people, because in that community, this is all you were success. So the reasons are endless as to why you won't succeed. So what do these people do when they finally succeed? A couple people succeed. They make it wealthy for themselves. It was because the community didn't support them when they were going through their struggles. They found support in the other racial communities, the Asian accountants, the white people who helped them along the way.
Well,
what is the,
it's
you know,
but it's funny that you say that.
We let back a little bit though, Tyler. You hit it right on the head though. That's all those other fragmented things you were saying were very true. But go back to where you started branching off.
It's a lack of empathy.
It's a lack of interest
for your own time.
These nonprofits or these programs. It's what happens is they start getting lax, and then there's non-interest in them anymore. And you said it, because the problem is because capitalism will win. The capitalist will always come in. You can save the whales and the seals and the pups all you want. Capitalism will find a way to corner the market and still bring the dredge of taxes and burdens.
And you would think that would be true, but if you statistically look at the performance of those ETFs before they were delisted, they were not delisted because of bad performance. In fact, if you look at any group and you were to say, I'm going to create an ETF in Asian-only owned businesses, which would be a thing, or you were to black-only owned businesses or this, and you pick a group, statistical data studies have been showed that financial performance-wise, you would make just as much money investing in a black-owned pizzeria as you would a white-owned pizzeria or an Asian-owned pizzeria. It doesn't have to do with that. It has everything to do with the institutions that are supporting the amount of money going into the ETFs wasn't there.
That's
and it's
what
because
I'm
the
more or less,
black community, for whatever reason, whether it's a cultural issue or they don't want to invest in their own businesses.
A lot of people ask me why I focus on the black community so much when every community has the same problems. Well, the reason why is because me being a black man, having experienced what I've experienced, is I can say things that most people don't have the credibility to say.
Sure.
And one of those is the fact that the biggest problem in black America is that we've been taught to see each other as niggas and not as people and brothers and sisters. So it's a big difference psychologically in thinking, I'm going to go kill this nigga. And then thinking, I'm going to go kill my brother. I'm going to go kill my cousin. I'm going to kill my neighbor. It's a big difference. And the media industry has taught us to embrace the identity of being niggas as if it's cool. If you go up to the average black person from the hood and tell him he's a real nigga, he's going to think it's a compliment.
Well, the thing is like it's sickening, because if you put history into it, not to bring history into it, but somewhere along the line they had to pick up that word somewhere. Okay, who do they learn it from?
Oh, it came from the original word nigger. We already know that. And it's funny because
look up the root history behind how that came about. And it's like, like somebody so quick to point the finger and be like, that's the problem, hey man. It's like, I don't know if you want to hate on the slave owner too, because you have to, if you're going to judge him, then you have to go back in his timeline and see why he is the way he is.
Yeah, well, it's
what's the root of all this? You see,
and if you're going to go all the way back, the very first slave owner in this country was a black man who came up with the idea that if I imported people to work on my plantation for free, I can make more money. Capitalism.
Yeah.
Okay. Now he gets tossed on, slavery was a devil of the white man, blah blah blah. And lots of people took advantage of it. And obviously, it's there.
I need coffee. What's her name? Oh, okay.
But at the end of the day, poverty is an everyone problem.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to divide into cultures and races and say, well, I'm only going to help my own people. We're getting ready to come up with Martin Luther King Day tomorrow, and he was the epitome of finding the real issue of the problem, which was cultural issues that spawned from non-education and the fact that there is not empathy between all people regardless of your race. That's the super summary version. Poverty is an everyone problem. The problem is in our society as a whole, and that we make everything about a racial issue when it doesn't have to be about a racial issue. When I go to hire somebody, I don't take their race into account. I want the best person for the job. You literally have the President of the United States coming out on public television in today's society and going, I'm going to appoint a Supreme Court justice because they're a black woman. When did we as a country decide to pick people based off of their race rather than off of their qualifications? Now, if they're the best person for the job, that's great, but that's where we're going wrong. We've made everything about such a racial issue when in order to fix our own socioeconomic and society problems, all we have to do is be empathetic with one another, come together and say, you know what, we're going to hire the best person for the job. I don't see race when I look at somebody, I see the person that's behind them. If you're going to do that, it has to start at the top down. And when your own federal government is appointing officials based off of their race rather than their qualifications, that's what starts the whole problem.
Well, I'll tell you what. So when you start talking about the government issue, I could go on for days. Mm-hmm. It can create such a big tangent. But what I am going to say about the government is the word governmental is 2 words. That explains their job. They tell you what to think so that you can vote the way that they want you to vote, hopefully. That's what they're after. So, Candace Owens, it's funny, I hate to keep bringing her name up, but, she made a hell of a point. Every presidential election cycle, the Democrats make sure race becomes a part of the discussion so they can scare black people into voting for them. And black people believe universally that the Democrats are our friends and the Republicans are racists that hate us, and that simply is not true. But that's a narrative that's been getting pushed since I was a child. And the truth of the matter is, whenever the government creates programs that engenders dependency from any group, they know they can go back and count on those votes the next election cycle so they can keep those programs running and keep the handouts coming. And through that dependency, you have to raise the money to fund these programs, and then they get to control the economy through taxation.
That's right.
And that's why you always hear the Republicans saying that they are communist or socialist. And I can't really disagree with that from looking at it from that perspective, but I really would like to see black people fully appreciate the power of education, because that's where it all begins. The ability to think is directly related to a person's intellect, which is defined by a person's vocabulary and comprehension of language. Because if you can't process new information and think it through, then there's no way for you to learn.
Right. Education is the most important part of that. So talk about black families as well as white families in the financial world. The median net worth of a black household in this country is $24,100, but compared to a white family, $188,200. Okay. So if black workers make up 12.9% of the workforce, but there's a disparity there, and they only earn 9.6% of the total wages, so that means the median income is roughly 30% less for a black family on average than it is for a white family. Well, why is that? Well, if you look at the statistical data going back, it turns out that because of how you're represented growing up, the jobs that you can actually go out and afford, what your education is, like the jobs that you're educated to do, you look back and then you've got this point where, you've got black people mostly filling the low income jobs and then struggling to get by. So how do you build wealth for yourself or your family if you, as a culture, have been educated to, it's the old flea in the jar scenario. We can put you into this jar and the flea will jump and hit the jar and it'll realize it can only jump so far before it gets hurt. Well, guess what? It
starts jumping so high.
It starts jumping so high so it doesn't hurt itself. Okay? That over generations, it will breed, and when it breeds, even the new fleas know. I've been told I can only jump so high. Even if you take the lid off the jar, the fleas don't jump out of the jar. And it's the same thing. You have to fix the underlying cultural education problem before you can expect to see results. And it will be a generational thing. It will take time.
I think, let's wheel it back a little bit back to what Tion was saying, though. There's a stigma, if that's the correct word. I failed to find the right word. There's a modality, there's a mode of thought that is pandering at best. Y'all know where I'm going with this? In other words, he wants to break out of the stigma of us pandering too much and vice versa. Because what will happen is like, okay, let's look at the income of the average young black man, woman, whatever, age groups, so on and so on, and this is their occupation, okay, whatever. I personally have been able to live off less than 20 grand in my pocket in 1 year's time. I did it during COVID. Does that mean, you know, that I hate to go down to the segregation of it, or categorizing of it, not segregation, is that, you know, can a black man do the same? I don't know.
Well,
Should be able to, maybe. But the thing is, have you noticed in media, this is what Tion's hitting on, that we pander, the greater of the white community loves to pander, like, oh, they're hurting. We got to give them all the empathy and all the advantages we can give them, and then, you know, vice versa, they ain't going to give me that because I'm black. And it's like we still live in those days. There's still a contingency number of certain people that want to pander just because they're black, and then on the other side, it's like, give me the food from Corral's buffet because, you know, you just attacked me because I'm black. It's like, man, that's not even cool because I'm not pandering to you. Why are you pandering
Jesus
back to me?
in the Bible.
You see what I'm saying?
Fish, he eats for a day. You teach
Well,
them
yeah.
to fish, they fish for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And we as a white culture, because, you know, oh, well, we're...
But I'm with
grew
you
up
on that
before
though, T, because
Yeah.
we need a break from that mold that we owe them something and they owe
I'm gonna
us
tell
something.
you guys a
You know
funny
what I'm
story.
saying?
I'm
Because
gonna
I
tell
feel
you-
you on that.
I'm gonna tell you a
That's
story.
still in society today.
Look, I'm going to tell you a funny story. I was driving an ice cream truck in the Midwest. I was in Illinois, and I pulled up on this kid, and it's about 3 in the afternoon. It's during the summer. There's no school. And I pull up on this kid, and I've been having a decent day. And this kid opens his wallet, and he has more money than me. And I'm sitting there scratching my head like, why would this 9-year-old little boy have so much money in his wallet? So his friend walks up, another kid about the same age, and he says, dang, that's a lot of money. The kid says, yeah, it's $495. My mother told me that if I save up enough money to buy my own Xbox, she would buy me the games I want. So I've been saving my allowance. He said, how much money do you have? The other kid looks in his wallet and counts, and he says, oh, I got $275. The first kid says, oh man, put that away. I'll buy your ice cream. And that taught me a valuable lesson about why success breeds success. Financially responsible parents are capable of raising financially responsible children. It's cyclical. The wealth doesn't get passed along because I'm a millionaire and my kids inherit this money. They teach these children how to handle this money when they actually get it. That's why the money that goes back from the old slave plantations and the railroad families and the oil families is still making these families money because they train their children to be able to make the most of what they have. In the poor communities, you have people that don't respect education at all. They don't have much of an education. They can't teach their children how to prepare for success because they don't even comprehend the success themselves, and it creates cyclical failure.
And the easiest example
And those
of that
types
is
think they
lottery
are good.
winners and sports athletes. How often do you hear of a sports athlete making money, they come from a lower income background and they didn't have the education, and what their money's gone before they're even out of the leagues? Or a lottery winner, someone wins the lottery. What are the statistics on lottery winners blowing it within a year or two because they don't have the education?
Don't just stop at athletics. I mean, across the board.
Oh yeah, absolutely. People
Morgan
coming into
Freeman,
money.
Denzel
Yeah.
Washington, Chris Rock, Ice Cube, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Of course, you know, that gets kind of skewed. We would all agree, Snoop Dogg today is probably he's syndicated. You know, I mean.
Well, there's an outlier to everything, but
Yeah,
the
right.
premise is that
Yeah.
in the 90th percentile, people who are not educated about finance, who are not taught by their parents, you are a product of your environment. If you come up in an educated environment, you won't blow any money that you have. Life insurance rates for purchases, for example,
true.
in the black community
But-
compared to every other racial group are the lowest. Black people purchase the least amount of life insurance.
Yeah.
So if you're not leaving anything for your children to leave, then there is no generational gap. Okay, there's no generational wealth to be left, which in life insurance is one of the easiest
I
ways
saw
to do
one
it.
on TikTok. It's an ad about the black community believes they're entitled to a retirement too. Something as crazy, far-fetched as like, you know, we deserve a retirement too.
Well, I will say this.
And it's like, wait a
The
second.
the reparations question is a funny one because there is no denying that there is a lot of success in America that exists because of the sacrifice of slaves. That
Right.
can't be
Absolutely.
denied. Now, here we are 5, 6 generations later, and there are a lot more black people than there were slaves that helped build this country. And it's like, okay, we want some reparations. Well, first you have to figure out, how to itemize the value of what's been done. And then you have to figure out, okay, well, when we distribute this money, for real, it's actually a worthwhile investment for America, because passing out reparations to a lot of uneducated, financially ignorant people is only going to stimulate the economy. It would be a new stimulus check because they're all going to spend it.
The problem with that becomes, are you going to give
not teaching them how to
reparations to
fish,
the black slave owners who own slaves in
You're
the
still
first
not
place?
teaching them how to
And
fish.
how do you know?
Yeah.
You're still giving them a fish every day.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you, because basically, I saw a statistic in the early 2000s that said that African Americans spend 70% of the money that gets spent on clothes, cars, jewelry, and beauty accessories.
I mean, it's good for the economy, like you said.
When they only
but
they only earn 9%. Is that what you said? 9% of the income. So that means all of our money goes to name brand clothes, cars, jewelry, rims.
good for the economy, but it doesn't help them.
It don't help
grow.
us at all.
It doesn't help
So it
them
sounds like a
grow.
lack of financial education rather than a lack of effort.
That.
Yeah.
Is probably
But what are you blaming the effort on? Oh, I can't get ahead because the system is rigged. Well, if you're spending 99% of your income because you weren't ever taught any better, that's not on you. If you don't have an education to know something, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Okay? So it sounds like then the problem there, whether it be culturally there because you have to be better than your neighbors, you gotta have the same thing, keeping up with the Joneses, or it's just that's just the way it is, and that you have to go have the latest clothes, etc. But a lack of financial education can kill anything faster, whether it be a business,
I would agree.
society,
I would agree.
anything.
Yeah. And that's even if you're born with a millionaire
So,
parent. If you
right.
can't grasp,
That's what I was
then
going
you're
to
going
say
to spend
next.
it all by the time
Yeah.
you're 20 and you're done.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say
So
next.
back on the reparations issue, so how far back do you go? Do you go back and you give reparations to the white Irish slaves? Do you go back and you do it for the sharecroppers? Do you go back to the Barbary slave trade, which for 3 centuries there were 1 million whites enslaved by northern black Africans?
well,
and
I'll tell you what,
Italians-
my solution.
Italians were
So
enslaved by
if you're going to
Moors.
do reparations, and I say by Moors, but let's just say you're asking a predominantly white nation to pay reparations for the African American community. Okay, let's do that. But where do you draw the line? Do you go back and do you say, okay, well there were 1 million whites between the 16th and the 19th centuries enslaved by northern African warlords? Okay, are we going to go back and pay reparations to all the white people for that? At some point, and again, Martin Luther King, he hit the nail on the head. At some point, you have to draw a line and say, we as a society will no longer tolerate issues being brought up and made as racial issues, when at the end of the day, the real solution is we all need to come together and be empathetic of each other, and instead of seeing you as a black man or me as a white man or
We're American.
Right, we're all
We
Americans.
bleed red.
And
we
all
chase
bleed
green.
red. Our blood is all the same red color, and we all chase the green. We all chase the dollar.
Till we die.
And to work together and hire people based off their qualifications rather than their race. And until that becomes the culturally accepted amongst all race deal, you're going to continue to have racial problems that are only an issue because they're brought up as racial problems.
Yeah. That's true. We are at let's see. We are at 53 minutes. I figure an hour would be a good time to cut this off so we can go ahead and start wrapping this up. Like I said, my primary focus here is just to be able to help America comprehend the real nature of the problems that affect the poor black community and actually finding solutions to those problems. I believe I have some of the solutions with the programs that I want to create, but the bigger issue becomes, we live in a society where everything has to be politically correct, for example. Okay, and we have to care about the well-being of most of society. Okay, so if it's detrimental to society to say something negative against a Jew, if it's detrimental to society to say something negative against the LGBTQ plus and whatever else they've added community, you can't call a person fat, you can't call a person skinny because it's detrimental to the well-being of society, then why in the hell is it acceptable to give out awards to rappers who are influencing black children to join gangs, kill people, sell drugs, and dehumanize women? That makes absolutely no sense to me. And then the media industry tells us that this is our culture when they put it out there. So when you have the average white American from somewhere else in America where they are not personally exposed to black people, what narrative are they going to believe about the black race? What gets fed to them through the media? And the media shows them rappers, gangsters, thugs, women who rap about being prostitutes, that, and they're being told that this is our culture. So when these so-called political leaders pop up and they say, oh, we're going to be tough on crime, we have to fix this problem, and these policies are arguably racist, the ignorant white people are going to pass them because they don't know any better. The only representation of black people they get is that we are criminals.
Well, it's not just that. If you pass violent laws, if you pass laws against violent crimes that are tougher on them, and one race is committing 53% of them, it's going to proportionally affect that race.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be. If you're committing that much of the crime, it's going to disproportionately affect you. Now, is there racism in this country? Absolutely, it still exists. It's more on a case-by-case basis. But you can't tell me that we're more racist today than we were, in the Jim Crow era coming up. And if that's so, how did we get that way? Well, or is it the fact that the single motherhood rate in some cultures is extremely high, not just in the African community?
Well, I'll tell you what. As far as racism and the way that it affects the black community, black people can fix that. If we stop identifying,
here, take that one,
as being niggas,
I'll give you the
no one has an excuse to treat us like one.
You hear me?
But when you grow up being taught that your culture is to be a nigga, then you embrace that and you live by it and you suffer the consequences that come with it. Because when you embrace the identity like that, it affects the way you speak, it affects the way you put your clothes on, it affects the way you communicate your ideas. So when you go to the job interview and you trying to be a cool, real nigga, and the next person walks up and he could be even blacker than you. And the person that's interviewing you could actually be a racist. But when he walks up and he speaks English and he articulates what he wants from this job and what he can offer to the job, he's going to beat you out of that job just because he speaks English.
And I think Fred brought up a good point earlier, just to round that off. On the outside, right, as a white person, where we're coming in at is we need to be more empathetic and offer support, not just financially, right? Because financially isn't going to do anything to solve the problem. But there's absolutely nothing wrong, the Big Brother program. Those are great. And just offer to be a support, a leaning ear for somebody to listen to talk about their problems and just offer a different cultural perspective. Because a lot of the times, education, just giving someone a difference in education or giving them a hand up, being a mentor
with the camp
in their lives, in the camp would be one way to do it, but just being a mentor to people will give them a leg up that other people don't have. Just education is the key.
This is somewhat of a twisted, sadistic way of looking at it, but the sales, it's all about sales. The devil's got to go through 200 no's. 200 no's, no thank you, to find the one I will. So, not to equate that in the same kind of source, but with our youth, it all begins with our youth. And I think in a camp, if I had 200 kids every summer, if I get one kid out of 200, I would do it for that one kid, because he'll pick up something from me that will last with him. Anybody that's been in sports knows what I'm talking about. They usually find their...
All right, we got a minute left. You haven't said anything all day. You got to close us out, Nate. At least.
Come on, Nate.
It's all very tough topics to talk about. I guess my points are coming from a more of a spiritual perspective. I think a lot of the problems with mankind are the fact that we don't respect each other. If we all realize that we come from the same divine spark, that will respect each other, will help each other, not for the benefit of ourselves, but as charity in general. And speaking about depression on another subject, the solution to depression is going after a goal that's very good and very challenging, and achieving that goal. And that's the cure for depression, from my personal experience.
All right, and with that, I'm gonna let. In fact, I think that's something that I want to get after next time we sit down and talk. Is actually
That's a good ending. Right?
Yeah.
That's a good wrapping it up right there.
the mental health issues in America and how they contribute to the problems that we're trying
Those
to
are the
fix.
things you can't see going on is the mental. That's inside.
Yeah.
You know, that's not apparent. That's not tangible. That's intangible.
All right, so we are gonna sign off. We are less than a minute over our hour time, and thank you, America, for listening, and we'll be back next week.